What's a secret you will take to the grave, but don't mind telling on the internet? Story 1. I used to work at the airport and got heavily discounted fares for friends and family. My mom was planning a trip to Key West with her friend, and they intended to drive since flying was too expensive. I convinced her to let me handle the flight arrangements, promising they'd save a lot. A typical 500-plus flight ended up costing around $250 for both of them combined. However, I was still new at booking reservations and accidentally messed it up. I think I only booked a one-way ticket or something similar. The night before their flight, I had to rebook everything, which cost me $450 for both tickets. Money I really didn't have. I never told my mom about it. Since it was for Mother's Day, I considered it my gift to her. It's been nearly 10 years and she still doesn't know. Story 2. Speaking of graveyards, when I was a teenager, some friends and I got really stoned and wandered through the town cemetery. There was a section with generic flat grave markers from the 1800s, and I found myself imagining the lives of those people who had lived in the same town so long ago. Then I noticed one plate sticking up, crooked and loose. I bent down, touched it, and realized it wasn't attached at all. I picked it up in my hand. In my ridiculous stoned teenage mind, I decided to put it in my backpack, thinking I'd somehow honor this stranger better than the negligent groundskeeper who left it lying around in the aisle. None of my friends saw what I did. Hours later, when I was sober, guilt and panic started to set in. I hid the grave marker in my closet for about a year before finally throwing it back over the cemetery fence late one night. To this day, I hope Bessie Jane Holmes doesn't mind that I kept her marker for a while. I still shudder at the guilt of such immoral stupidity. Story 3. I attempted to harm my mother. She was abusive, both verbally and physically. She'd hit me in places no one would see or rip clumps of my hair out when my dad was away for work. I suspect she might have a personality disorder. One night, after coming home from my second job, she got in my face, yelling and provoking me. I'd had enough. For years, she went through phases where she wouldn't work, leaving me to kill myself every summer, working over 50 hours a week to pay family bills under my parents' names and get my younger sister to all her activities. That night, something snapped. I tried to slam her head into the wall. She screamed for help, but I kept going. I shoved her to the ground, kicked her repeatedly in the abdomen and thighs, and continued trying to push her head through the wall with one hand. The wall didn't give. It was plaster and lath, part of an old New England house. But I hurt her badly, and I won't lie. It felt good in the moment. She's destroyed so many lives and never faced any consequences. No one in our family ever helped me or called the police when she abused me. The only one who ever stepped in was our dog, who would growl at her until she backed down. For years, I showed restraint and never fought back. But that night I crossed the line, and my dad called the cops on me. When the police arrived, they split us up to interview us. I was exhausted and blurted out, "Where were you when I was 8 and she was doing that to me?" One of the officers seemed taken aback, like he knew I was telling the truth, and this was years of pain boiling over. After speaking with his partner, he came back and said, "This isn't an assault, it's a mental health crisis." They pressured my parents to agree, refusing to leave until they accepted it as a medical issue rather than a criminal one. An ambulance was called, and I was sent to the hospital as part of a diversion program. I spent 3 days in detox, emerged without charges, and left with a prescription for Prozac and a state-sponsored therapy plan. Ironically, trying to hurt my mom probably saved my life. Therapy gave me tools I desperately needed, especially through CBT and DBT. But I don't tell anyone about it. Who would date someone with this kind of history? How could I ever get promoted at work? So, I keep it to myself. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Be kind. You never know what someone has been through, and you never know what people are capable of when pushed too far. Story 4. I've really enjoyed reading these stories, so I thought I'd share mine. It's a bit of a disaster, but funny. After surgery, I had a post-op appointment with my doctor up the hill. On the drive there, I realized I needed to use the bathroom, but figured I'd just go when I got to the office. Somehow, I completely forgot about it. Impossible as it seems. Driving back down the hill, the urge hit me like a freight train. I pulled over on the side of the highway, desperate for a solution. With no bathroom in sight, I grabbed the only thing nearby, a thin, empty styrofoam box from Panda Express on the passenger seat. Things escalated quickly. In my panic, I made my first mistake. I missed the box. Instead, I ended up decorating the driver's seat. And because I'd been on antibiotics, it wasn't solid. It was a full-on mud pie, split pea soup disaster. It completely filled the seat. Now I was performing an acrobatic effort to avoid sitting back in the mess while trying to figure out my next move. Somehow I managed to pop the trunk and grab a change of clothes I'd thankfully left in the car. But God wasn't done with me yet. After shutting the car door to preserve what little dignity I had left, I realized I had locked the keys inside, with the engine running. Mortified, I had no choice but to call a tow truck. When the driver arrived, Hank, the tow truck guy, had to unlock my car door while staring directly at the abomination on my seat. His bewildered look said it all. All I could do was hang my head and mutter, "It's exactly what it seems." I'm sure Hank had one hell of a story to share when he got home that day. Story 5. You know those stories about girls in the 70s who went to live with an aunt for a year during high school? I did that in 2008. I was a naive teenager with irregular periods, and one day, a friend thought it would be hilarious to buy some cheap pregnancy tests from Walmart just to see what happened. We laughed about it until one of them came back positive. At first, we couldn't remember whose test was whose, so we bought 2 more, and it turned out to be mine. That's when it dawned on me. I'd had S. My school didn't offer education, and my parents never talked to me about it, so I panicked and swore my friend to secrecy. I ignored the situation until my clothes stopped fitting. Around that time, I confided in my older cousin over the phone, and she came up with the perfect plan. It was April by then, and when I mustered the courage to visit Planned Parenthood, they told me I was due in August. My cousin called my mom, claiming there was an amazing summer music program in her city that I absolutely had to attend. My mom loved the idea and sent me off to San Francisco the day after school ended. I stayed with my cousin, who went to all my appointments with me, helped me find a social worker, and supported me through the process of finding adoptive parents for my baby. When I returned home before my junior year, my mom barely asked about my summer. She only commented that I must have lost a few pounds. My cousin passed away in a car accident in 2012, and she was the only family member who knew. The only other people aware are the doctors I saw in Oakland, the adoptive parents, and that one friend. Every year I receive a photo and a letter about my daughter. I send money for her college and a card for her birthday, which her parents may give her when she turns 16, if she wants them. However, they are not allowed to share my contact information. I have no interest in meeting her or being part of her life. Knowing she's safe and cared for is enough for me. I will take this secret to my grave, and if anyone ever found out, I'd deny it. Story 6. I don't really know how to word this, but I wanted to get it off my chest. I'm a guy, a second-year college student, and I've become known as the dad of my dorm. I watch out for everyone and act like a protector for my friends, most of whom are girls. This year, a very close friend told me she had been raped by her ex years ago. It hit me hard, but sadly, it wasn't the first time I'd heard a story like this. Nearly every girl I've become close to has shared something similar. A god-awful story about some monster who hurt them. Last year, one of my friends confided that she had been raped and contracted an STD because of it. Now she has to tell every guy she likes about it, and they almost always leave her heartbroken. It kills me to see what she goes through. Whenever I see these girls, I hug them extra hard. I worry about them constantly. It breaks my heart that their stories aren't unique and that there will likely be more. I've never told anyone about their experiences because they trusted me, and I'd never betray that. But I feel helpless. I wish I could do more than just be their friend. I wish I could take on their pain so they wouldn't have to carry it. But all I can do is be there for them and hope it helps, even a little. Thanks for reading this, strangers. It's a weight off my chest to say something, even here, since I can't talk about it anywhere else. Story 7. My mom died from breast cancer. She also had MS diagnosed shortly after I was born. In the end, it was cancerous fluid building up in her lungs that killed her, combined with the chemo and radiation that stopped working and were just destroying her body alongside the cancer. We spent a week in the hospital with her before she passed. I cried so much during that time that I'm amazed I'm still able to cry now. But there are 2 things I can never tell my family. First, I'm not upset that she died. She suffered so much, and I'm glad she's finally at peace and not in pain anymore. Whenever I miss her or cry because she's gone, it's always for selfish reasons, like wishing she were here to comfort me or help me make decisions. It's hardly ever just because she's gone, because I wouldn't want her to endure that suffering any longer. Second, Her illness and death made me decide that I will never treat the cancer I'm likely to get one day. Unless it's something easy to cure, I won't go through chemo or radiation. I've seen what it does, and I refuse to live like that. If it's bad, I'd rather accept my fate, live a few good months, and say my goodbyes. I won't spend years bedridden, unable to care for myself, only to die in pain anyway. As a bonus secret, I'll admit I'm really angry at my older siblings. My mom got to see both of them graduate high school, but she died 2 years before I did. It's petty, but it makes me furious because I loved her so much. And I wish she could have been there for at least one big moment in my life. To make it worse, my dad once said to my middle sister, "At least she got to see you graduate, right in front of me." What an absolute jackass. He's always been an abusive piece of shush, but that comment really stuck with me. Anyway, thanks for reading my rant. I have a lot of pent-up rage, and it feels good to let some of it out. Story 8. I'm great at lying, and no, this post isn't one of them. I lie so well that sometimes I'm not even sure what's true anymore. It's helped me a lot in life, and honestly, there haven't been any serious negatives. I have my dream job as a producer for a sports radio station's afternoon drive show. It's exactly where I've always wanted to be, working in sports broadcasting. You'd think I needed a degree to get here, right? Nope. I dropped out of community college because I needed to work and support myself. But I told my employer I graduated from a 4-year school, and they bought it. When college sports come up, I just say my school doesn't have great teams, or any teams at all. To be fair, I'm not unqualified. I worked at my college's radio station, recorded music for my friends' bands, and produced a podcast. So I've got experience, even if I had to pick up some skills on the fly. The lies don't stop there. I've been lying to my current girlfriend for a while now, just like I lied to my ex of 4 years and the ex before her. The lies weren't why they left, though. They just think my past was a lot more impressive than it actually was. For example, I work out a lot now and take pride in my body. Back in high school, I was scrawny, but my past 3 girlfriends, and even my coworkers, think I was a star athlete in volleyball, track, and baseball. The truth, I quit baseball at 16 and never did the others. But my current hobbies, rock climbing and amateur wrestling, make it believable. Sitting here eating lunch, I've been thinking about how different people in my life know different versions of my story. Do I get caught? Occasionally. Do I fix it with more lies? Absolutely. My life is essentially fabricated, but it's a great life. I have an amazing girlfriend, my perfect job, supportive friends, and a close family. I still lie, but not to hurt anyone. It's just to hype myself up or make situations more interesting. I don't regret a single lie I've told. Story 9. My husband committed suicide. My young children don't know the truth, and I will take it to my grave. In the weeks leading up to his death, he was withdrawn, irritable, and prone to angry outbursts. One day he punched a hole in a desk over a failed GTA heist. I told him he needed to get help. He threatened me in response, and I firmly told him it was therapy or divorce, and I'd call the police if he threatened me again. He attended one therapy session and a group anger management meeting, then declared himself cured. He was a stay-at-home dad to our 4 young children. The day he died, he lost his temper when our 6-year-old had an accident on the way to the bathroom. He threw our child down the stairs into a closet. Immediately after, he went into the garage and hung himself. I was at work 2 hours away when I got his final text. "I'm sorry, I'm mentally gone." I tried calling and texting back, but he didn't answer. When I got home, I found him in the garage. The kids were locked inside the house, scared, trying to break into the garage. All they saw was the ladder. They think their dad went into the garage and had an accident. That's all they know, and that's all they will ever know. I will never tell them the truth. They would blame themselves, especially my 6-year-old. Losing their father is traumatic enough, and I won't let them carry the weight of thinking they caused it. Mental illness and suicide are hard enough to understand as an adult. I will carry this burden alone to protect my children. They deserve to grow up without that guilt. Story 10. My mom used to run a food business specializing in pudding. At one point, she partnered with La Caquerie. Yes, the same La Caquerie that won cupcake wars and gained fame. Unfortunately, the business ended up draining our family's finances, so my mom decided to shut it down. During this time, a man claiming to be a restaurant owner offered to help her move and sell the equipment, saying he was friends with La Caquerie's owner. My mom trusted him and agreed. Fast forward to a day when my mom and I were in the garage unpacking the equipment, only to find that half of it was missing. Things got worse when my mom discovered the man wasn't a restaurant owner at all. Eventually, she confronted him, demanding to see his kitchen. After multiple refusals, she forced her way in, and there was all her equipment being used. It turned out he and Lakakari's owner had planned to steal her equipment and sell it. My mom took all her equipment back, and their scam ultimately failed, costing them money instead of making any. Jason Heisley, who my mom knew and was also disgusted by the situation, left Lakakari. Tired of being pushed around by the owner and unable to pursue his own ideas, he started his own cupcake shop called Cake by Jason Heisley, which is amazing. That's only part of my mom's story, though. When she was pregnant with me and my twin sister, she chose to deliver us at a hospital that wasn't great, but had recently been renovated and had many native Russian-speaking staff members, which was important to her. When my twin sister was born, none of her organs were functioning because apparently I had taken all the blood in the womb. The hospital staff did nothing until my mom practically screamed at them to do something. Miraculously, most of my sister's organs began functioning again, except for her kidneys. Johns Hopkins eventually stepped in to help, and my mom decided to sue the hospital for negligence. She struggled to find a lawyer willing to take the case until a friend connected her with one of the best lawyers in the state. He dug deep into the hospital's actions and was able to prove they had failed to do what they were supposed to in that situation. The hospital tried to shift the blame onto my mom, accusing her of doing something wrong during her pregnancy, but they failed. My mom won the case, and the money from the lawsuit now funds my sister's future college education. My sister eventually received a kidney transplant, and she's doing great now. Story 11. My wife and I took my little sister out for a birthday lunch to celebrate her turning 13. She has always been, and still is, a strict vegetarian because she loves animals. At the restaurant, she ordered a pasta dish that normally came with chicken, but substituted it with some kind of meatless tofu alternative. She was about a quarter of the way through her meal when she started panicking, claiming the restaurant had accidentally used chicken instead of the tofu. I looked at her plate and instantly knew it was chicken. To be sure, I took a bite, and yep, it was chicken. Instead of telling her the truth, I calmly reassured her that it was tofu. I said it had been so long since she'd eaten any meat that she must have forgotten what it tasted like. She hesitated, then thanked me for reassuring her and finished every single bite of her meal. 12 years later, my wife and I still laugh about it, but we've promised each other never to tell her the truth. Story 12. I almost froze to death at a festival in my tent, but I'll never tell my mom how serious it was because it would devastate her. It started with me buying drinks for a friend and then losing him in the crowd. Not wanting to waste the perfectly good double vodka Red Bulls, I drank them myself, even though I was already pretty drunk. That decision pushed me over the edge. The rest of the night is a blur, but I have vague memories of resting in random spots around the festival site and finding a few photos with strangers on my phone the next day. The next thing I knew, I woke up in my tent outside of my sleeping bag, wearing just a t-shirt. I was shaking uncontrollably and couldn't move, which was terrifying. I tried to call out for help, mumbling incoherently, and thankfully my friend heard me and rushed into the tent. A few minutes later, medics arrived and carried my shivering, half-limp body across the campsite to the medical tent. They told me the cold had caused my blood to rush to my vital organs, and that's why they had to try 3 times before they could draw any blood. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, shivering and terrified, until they finally told me I was okay to go back to my tent. To this day, I haven't fully recovered mentally from that experience. I told my mom I drank too much and went to the tent because I was feeling a little cold. But the truth is, I'm pretty sure that if I hadn't woken up when I did, I wouldn't have woken up at all. Story 13. When I was 12, my parents sent me to a Jewish summer camp in Colorado, and I absolutely hated it. It was a rough time for me. My parents had recently divorced, I'd been stress eating, and I'd gained 35 pounds in a year. I was depressed, newly overweight, and completely unprepared for the hardcore activities at camp. We went mountain climbing in the Rockies, which was cool in theory but gave me altitude sickness for a month, swam across lakes, and endured a 4-day rainy camping trip where we had to set up and tear down equipment in miserable conditions. On top of that, I was preparing for my bar mitzvah, so I had a tape recorder with Torah tropes from the Cantor that I was supposed to memorize. It was a lot to handle. My family didn't keep kosher. We were Reformed Jews. My diet at home consisted of bacon, shellfish, and anything far from kosher. I think the abrupt change in diet at camp Strict kosher meals wreaked havoc on my digestive system. I had terrible diarrhea for weeks, which is a nightmare when you're at the mercy of an 18-year-old counselor who insists on group activities. One night, the camp surprised us with a camping trip to stargaze 2 hours away from the main site. The stars were beautiful, but dinner was hobo packs, tinfoil filled with ground beef and vegetables cooked over the campfire. As everyone sat around the campfire, I felt the inevitable coming. I didn't have time to warn anyone. I just ran into the woods. As soon as I squatted down, an eruption of diarrhea exploded everywhere, on my calves, ankles, socks, and shoes. I was horrified. Crying, I stripped off my underwear and socks, trying to clean myself as best I could, but my underwear was completely destroyed. In a panic, I threw it as hard as I could into the woods, only to watch it get caught on a tree branch. My heart sank. My mom had written my name on the tag of every pair of underwear I owned. There was no way to retrieve it, and they'd come looking for me soon. I had to leave it there. Somewhere in Colorado, a pair of Stey underwear with my name on it still hangs on a tree. I returned to the campfire in shame, covered in the smell of camp food and shesh. When someone asked what happened, I lied and said I'd thrown up on myself and might have food poisoning. Somehow, I thought that would be less embarrassing. They radioed another counselor to pick me up, a 2-hour drive back to camp. I had to sit in the car, reeking of diarrhea, trying to maintain the illusion that I was sick. When I got back, I showered and went to bed, but the shame of that night haunts me to this day. I still think about someone finding that underwear on a tree branch with my name written on it and piecing together what happened. Here, story 14. I have emotional and anger issues. Being bipolar and having ADHD doesn't help. Since first grade, I've been part of a folk dancing group. When I was 10, there was a 16-year-old girl in the group who was essentially the leader. She wasn't the oldest, but no one questioned her. She acted however she wanted, made all the decisions, and said whatever came to mind, usually mean, cutting comments. If I didn't do exactly as she said, she'd hit me hard in the neck. It hurt so badly that I couldn't move for a while afterward. No one ever stepped in to stop her, not once. One day after she hit me for no reason again, I finally snapped. I told her, just because you're a girl, that doesn't give you the right to hit a boy for no reason and get away with it. Her response? Of course I can, and I will. What are you going to do about it? I lost it. I pushed her as hard as I could, and she fell. Despite being nearly double my weight, she was about 140 pounds and I was just 70, she went down. As she hit the ground, I grabbed her hair and smashed her head against the concrete about 10 times. When I finally let go, I stood up and spit on her. Everyone saw it, and this time no one stepped in to stop me or help her. It felt like everyone knew it was justified. She was taken to the hospital, and I later learned the extent of the injuries I'd caused. I displaced and broke her jaw, broke her nose, knocked out 6 teeth, and nearly caused her to lose vision in one eye. Her face was a complete mess. I don't regret it. She hurt me and humiliated me for so long, and no one ever did anything to stop her. That day I stood up for myself in the only way I felt I could. Story 15. Viewer discretion is advised. 9 years ago, I went through one of the darkest experiences of my life. I used to work afternoon shifts, and by the time I finished around 10 p.m., no buses were available to take me home. I had to walk, and my usual route passed by a notorious tower block known for its rough inhabitants. Nearly every night, a group of drunk men would yell obscene comments and try to provoke me into a confrontation. For a while, it was only verbal abuse, but one night they escalated. They ran at me, surrounded me in a circle, and started pushing me around like a rag doll. When I fell, I managed to crawl between one of their legs and escape. After that, I began carrying a knife for protection. Where I lived, carrying small knives was legal as long as they didn't exceed certain limits. A few weeks later, I encountered the same group again. This time, one of them punched me in the face, and I fell to the ground. Panicking, I stabbed one of them in the back of his leg and ran for my life. I started taking a different route home, but about a month later, one of them coincidentally spotted me. 2 nights later, the entire group ambushed me again. This time, they dragged me into a flat belonging to one of them. They stripped me naked, pinned me down on a bed, and poured vodka into my mouth as I struggled to break free. Once they decided I'd had enough, they started drinking themselves, and then they raped me. Each of them took turns while the others held me down. When they were done, the one I had stabbed who seemed the most unhinged, inserted his hand into me several times, causing intense pain and bleeding. After they finished, they let me get dressed and leave, but not before threatening to kill me if I went to the police. I'd already decided during the attack not to tell anyone. I went home, stopped the bleeding as best I could, disinfected myself, showered, and went to bed. Thankfully, they ignored me after that, but I moved away a month later anyway. Physically, I still deal with the after effects. Tears in my rectum that reopen from time to time. Emotionally, I got through it relatively well, though the anxiety I've battled since childhood didn't make things easier. I also went through a brief period of suicidal thoughts but managed to overcome them. I've never told anyone about what happened and likely never will, at least not verbally. If you've gone through something terrible, know that you're not alone. Don't do anything drastic. Reach out for help if you need it. Life is hard, but it's worth fighting for. Story 16. I think I'm crazy, or maybe I just have a problem. No, I know I have a problem, but I wonder if it's just because I'm 15. Still, something about this doesn't feel like it's just my age. I won't go into detail about my past, but I'll say this. I've never felt normal. It's like my emotions aren't really there. I've gotten really good at acting normal, though. I watch how other people react, memorize their behaviors, and copy them to blend in. But inside I feel split, like there are different sides of me, multiple versions of myself. I even talk to them. I've done this for as long as I can remember. They're not imaginary friends. I'm sure of that. These sides of me aren't fully separate, but they feel distinct. I know of two. When I imagine them, they're just blurred figures. Sometimes I can be them, and other times it's like they're with me, talking to me. I've never told anyone about this. I don't want to. I like testing myself, seeing how much I can handle. I push myself through pain, work until I collapse, and even take this approach with relationships. I don't have any real relationships, just fake ones where I act like a different person, become a different person. I guess I have some past trauma, but I look at it as something that made me stronger. I'm even grateful for it in a way. It wasn't good, it broke me, but it taught me how to survive. The only thing I truly have is myself, even if myself feels like multiple people. This is the first time I've ever written something like this. I'm not going to reread it because if I do, I'll delete it. If you're reading this, just saying hi would mean a lot to me. Story 17. A friend of mine had the misfortune of having the ultimate helicopter parents. They controlled every aspect of his life. His college major, his career path, even when he was supposed to get married. Everything had to be perfect, and they constantly pressured him to perform. They were the kind of nightmare parents who made the Lannisters look like the Huxtables. I tried to encourage him to stand up to them, but he never could. They sent him off to a prestigious college, a place that churns out Nobel Prize winners. But even being away from home didn't give him any freedom. His parents found ways to monitor and control him from a distance. When I heard he vanished without a trace, I wasn't entirely surprised. After all his parents put him through, I half expected it. Of course, I was worried about him, but my bigger problem became the private detective his parents hired to track him down. The guy kept hounding me and anyone else who knew their son, demanding to know his whereabouts. He even waited outside my apartment once, forcing me to file a complaint with the police. His dad was even worse, a total psycho. He confronted me and a few others, and it nearly came to blows. I made up my mind that if I ever found out where my friend was, I wouldn't tell his parents unless he genuinely needed help. 6 months later, I got a call out of the blue. It was him, and he was doing great. He trusted me to keep his secret and wanted to let me know so I wouldn't worry. It turned out he had been on the verge of a complete breakdown and had even considered hurting himself. The only bright spot in his life was a panhandler girl he often saw near where he lived. She encouraged him to think about his options. Stay and live a life he hated forever, or leave and start fresh. She was planning to hop freight trains to another city and invited him to join her. With nothing to lose, he cashed out what little money he had and left everything behind to ride the rails with her. That journey taught him what it felt like to be free for the first time in his life. He said he fell in love with her, and they decided to settle down together and become artists. The police eventually found him, but since he was an adult who had left voluntarily, they dropped the case. He asked them not to reveal his location to his parents because he feared they might hire someone to kidnap him or harm his girlfriend. I've kept his secret for years. We still talk occasionally, and I'm glad to say he's doing well. He and that girl got married, started a family, and make a living as artists who teach and work on private commissions. His parents still have no clue where he is, and I'll never tell them. They were the reason he hated his life and considered ending it. Now he's happy, and that's all that matters. I'll always keep his secret. Story 18. Back in high school, I was part of a group of bullies. I wasn't as bad as the others, but I was still a bully, and I take responsibility for that. One time, a friend in our group got cheated on by her boyfriend. The girl he cheated with wasn't from our school, but was part of the larger social circle, so we'd see her at parties and events. The four of us decided we were going to jump her at a party to get revenge for our friend. We got her alone outside. It wasn't hard since she was neutral toward us and didn't suspect anything. At first, we just smacked her around a bit, and I thought that's where it would end. But two of my friends didn't stop. They kept going, hitting her over and over and pulling at her clothes. I had to step in and tell them to stop because I honestly thought they were going to kill her. By the time they stopped, she was beaten badly. She was curled up on the ground crying and couldn't or wouldn't get up. I'm sure she had broken ribs at the very least. We left her there and skipped out. She never told anyone what happened, so we never got in trouble. In our neighborhood, people rarely snitched about fights, but I was sure she would because of how badly she was hurt. The only reason we probably got away with it was because my friends avoided hitting her face. If her parents had seen visible injuries, they might have figured out what happened and taken action. That night, as I lay in bed, I kept thinking, holy we left her there. What if she dies? I'm going to prison. Even though I didn't participate in most of the beating, I feel responsible for letting it go on for as long as it did. Looking back, I regret everything about that night. I hate who I was then and wish I'd had the courage to step in sooner. It's something I'll always carry with me. Story 19. I didn't grow up in a stable family. In fact, for the first 1.5 years of my life, no one knows exactly who took care of me. I was passed around between various family members because my mom wanted nothing to do with me. There was also domestic violence. Growing up in that environment left me with attachment issues. I first became suicidal when I was 10 years old, and things didn't improve when my first boyfriend in high school broke up with me, admitting he never really loved me and had been lying the whole time. In college, I met another guy. I knew I was still dealing with suicidal thoughts and had a deep fear of abandonment. So before we started dating, I asked him for a promise. No matter what, even if we broke up, we'd stay friends. I even joked, even if I become an axe murderer. He agreed. Over the years, he slowly helped me out of the dark place I was in. The way I think about it is like an inside out, where there are core memories and pillars like family and friends. I didn't have any pillars because I lacked a foundation. Together, over several years, we built that foundation. He helped me develop self-respect and believe that someone could love me. Eventually, though, he forgot the promise. Despite my emotional pleas over the years, he didn't remember. When I tried to remind him, he accused me of gaslighting him. It hurt so much, but I came to realize that people sometimes forget things, even when they're important to someone else. Staying in touch with me was painful for him, and I knew I'd been clingy and hurt him too. We couldn't talk without reopening old wounds. I wanted him to be happy, so I released him from his promise and tried to act like it didn't matter anymore. But it does matter. It's not about romance or sign. I've been in many relationships since, and I've been married to my husband for 5 years now. But he was family to me. He was the person who helped me build a foundation for myself, and his absence still feels significant. I've accepted that I may never make it up to him or have him back in my life, but I'll always be grateful for what he did for me. Story 20. Nobody's going to read this, but here goes. My dad had been battling cancer for years. Despite every treatment, his health steadily declined over the final months. We lived in different cities, so I didn't see or talk to him often. On his birthday, I called him, but he didn't answer. That's when I had a feeling something was wrong. I called my half-sister, and she confirmed he'd been in the hospital for 6 weeks. I drove down to the hospital the next day, and when I saw him, I barely recognized him. He was almost unconscious, lying there unable to speak. His wife told me that most days he could sit up and talk, but not that day. The most he could do was squeeze my hand. I'm not even sure if he knew who I was. At the time, I'd been to some music festivals and had a collection of fabric armbands that I'd never taken off. Some of them were over a year old. I knew they were probably carrying a lot of bacteria, but I didn't think much of it. 2 days later, I found out my dad had passed away the day after I visited him. I've never told anyone, but it's haunted me ever since. I keep wondering if my armbands somehow contributed to his death. I know he was already in critical condition, but the timing made me question everything. This was 4 years ago, and I still think about it sometimes. A few days after he passed, I cut off the armbands for good. Story 21. When I was younger, I had to go to the dentist, but my mom was busy, so my dad had to take me instead. After my appointment, we went to the desk, and they asked for my birth date. For some reason, I completely blanked and couldn't remember it. The staff then asked my dad, who also didn't know. We huddled together for a minute, trying to figure it out, and decided it was definitely in September. Either the 26th or the 28th. We went with the 26th. At the time, it didn't seem like a big deal. Fast forward about a year. My mom had left my birth certificate out while looking for her passport, and one of my younger cousins accidentally threw it into the fire. My mom was busy again the next day, so my dad took me to the town council office to get a replacement birth certificate. At the office, the lady at the desk asked for proof of my birth date that was less than 2 years old. All we had were my dental records. I was too shy to say anything about the mistake, and my dad didn't realize what had happened. So now in my 20s, the government officially thinks I'm 2 days older than I actually am, all because neither my dad nor I could remember my birthday when I had a sore tooth. Story 22. My ex-girlfriend had a life that no one should have to endure. Her mother abused her, and her stepdad did nothing to stop it. Her biological dad lived halfway across the world, and when she visited him, he didn't even recognize her. I remember the long nights when she would cry on the phone, and it broke me. She used to cut herself and had attempted suicide. I'm convinced she had many mental and physical health issues. Some she didn't even realize she had, but I was completely unequipped to help her. We were together for about a year, but our problems made the relationship unbearable. Despite the breakup, the experience changed me forever. I was at her house once when her mother screamed at her. Another time, I was on the phone with her when her mom hit her. Those moments haunt me. They made me feel utterly helpless, knowing I couldn't do anything to protect her. Now nothing phases me. The gore and chaos people share online don't affect me anymore. My friends joke about how I'm desensitized to it, but they don't understand. It's not because I'm tough. It's because I've already been through the emotional ringer. Nothing I see now compares to the pain she lived through and the helplessness I felt as I listened to her suffer. I think she's doing better now. She has a new boyfriend who I hope treats her well. But I'll never forget what she went through or how it changed me. And I can't begin to imagine what life is like for her now, carrying those scars. Story 23. One night, I received a frantic call from my brother. He was screaming, telling me that our dad had just been attacked by a group of men at his small factory. Background: my dad, now in his 60s, has endured a decade of unimaginable hardship. 10 years ago, he and my mom split up, and he moved into a tiny factory where he's been living ever since, sleeping on the floor. For a while, he bounced back and even remarried. His new wife encouraged him to pursue a product idea he'd been working on, but it turned into a nightmare. She pushed him to sell all his assets, including his retirement properties, and invest everything into launching the product. She burned through all his money, flying around the world with her daughter while racking up massive legal and manufacturing bills. Eventually, she left him, changed her name, and even tried to place a restraining order against him, despite his never being violent. The court dismissed it, but it broke his heart because he was still in love with her. The stress of the financial ruin, combined with the betrayal, caused his health to deteriorate. He started having mild heart attacks almost monthly. Instead of calling for help, he'd drive himself to the ER because he didn't want to burden us. On top of that, the factory he lived in was set to be demolished by year's end. Every time I got a call from my family, I braced myself for the worst. Fight night. That night, my dad was asleep on the factory floor when he heard loud bangs on the walls. A group of teenagers was outside, taking turns kicking the tin walls. My dad went out to confront them, warning he'd call the police. He grabbed a bag one of them had left behind, but they rushed him, took the bag back, and ran off. Worried they might return to break in, my dad called his only close friend, a mechanic whose shop was next door. He also called the police and my younger brother, though my brother didn't hear the phone ring because it was 3 a.m. Soon after, several cars arrived and the teens returned with their fathers. They claimed my dad had tried to fight them, and the group surrounded him. They pushed, taunted, and started hitting him. One teen even jumped on his back while another's dad began throwing punches. My dad never wanted to back down from a fight, squared up and defended himself despite the odds. But with a teenager clinging to his back, he struggled to keep up. All the while, the mechanic, his so-called friend, stood by and watched. At one point, the fight got too close to his car, so the mechanic moved it a few meters and then resumed watching. When the police arrived, they didn't arrest anyone. They simply told everyone to go home. My dad walked away bruised, with a black eye, but proud of himself for holding his own against the group. Aftermath. The incident devastated us. My brothers and I all have extensive martial arts training, and it killed us not to have been there to protect him. My younger brother, a 6'3" amateur boxer, was especially distraught. He went to the mechanic to get the security footage, but the mechanic refused to hand it over. My brother didn't take no for an answer, eventually walking away with the tapes. The footage showed everything: the teens arriving, the assault, and the mechanics in action. We also tracked down the teen and his dad. Through my brother's work, he has connections to some dangerous people who offered to take care of it. My brother declined, but decided to confront the dad himself. He and an associate waited for the man at the gym he frequented. When the man went into the locker room, they followed. My brother confronted him, saying, "So you like to gang up on crippled old men, huh?" and gave him a beating he wouldn't forget. The man cowered, trying to deny involvement, but my brother showed no mercy. When it was over, my brother told him, "It's done now," and left. Moving forward. Despite everything, my dad sees the fight as a bit of excitement in his otherwise bleak life. He's mentally and physically okay for now. There's a silver lining to all this. After years of setbacks, we're weeks away from signing a deal with a large investment firm for the product he originally dreamed of launching. If it works out, it could revolutionize its industry and finally give my dad a well-deserved victory. Story 24. My family and I have been living with a bedbug infestation for over 10 years. Not by choice, of course, but because the homeowner, who is also family, refuses to take responsibility. The situation is complicated, and with rent for a modest 2-bedroom apartment exceeding $1,000 in our area, moving out isn't an option. No one outside my immediate family knows about this. My entire life is stored in airtight bins: clothes, bags, and other belongings. Everything I wear is heat-treated before I leave the house to prevent spreading the infestation to others. We've managed to minimize the bugs in certain parts of the house, but the toll it has taken on us is immeasurable. Physically, I have scars from bites and my health has suffered. Mentally, I've reached breaking points more times than I can count. We've resorted to sleeping in chairs in the living room, the least affected space in the house, because sleeping in beds is unbearable. The homeowner used to justify inaction by saying, "Give me the money." Now that we pay rent, his answer is simply, "Move out." But even if we could afford an exterminator, the house is in such poor condition that it would likely be condemned. This situation has destroyed my social skills. It started when I was a teenager, so I've spent my formative years feeling isolated and ashamed. I can't talk to anyone about this, not even a therapist. I'm terrified of judgment. I'm doing what I can to hold on. I'm on strong antidepressants and try to stay out of the house as much as possible, especially during the long, dark winter months. I'm looking for work in this dead-end town, hoping for some way out, but every day is a battle. I don't know what keeps me going. Maybe it's the faint hope of finding a real home one day, but I know this secret will die with me. Whether that's sooner or later depends on how long I can hold on. Story 25. I met this girl in college. She was about 22, lively, and a lot of fun to be around. She was athletic and could easily have turned heads in fitness circles. We dated for almost a year and were physically intimate, but we never had S. I was open to it, and I thought she was too, but I never pushed. She came from a strict Lutheran family and seemed very respectful, maybe even fearful of her mother. One time I brought some beers over, and later I overheard her mom quizzing her about how many we had drunk. That kind of control was normal for her. Then one day she stopped answering my calls. I had no idea why. A couple of years later we reconnected. We went out a few more times and slept together again, but still no S. One night she invited me over. I went, of course. We were hanging out. She had a shower and got ready for bed. She was her usual bubbly self, wearing underwear and one of my old sweatshirts from years before. I was sitting on the couch in my boxers and a t-shirt. She came over, straddled me, and for a moment I thought this might finally be it. But then her expression changed, and she said she had something to tell me. She began to tell me how she had met a guy, dated him for a while, and decided to finally experience S for the first time. At this point, she was 30. She got pregnant, and when the guy found out, he skipped town and was never heard from again. She was a teacher, and at the time, her contract stated that an unwed pregnancy was grounds for immediate termination. So to protect her job and keep the pregnancy a secret from her family, she paid for her own abortion. By now, she was sobbing uncontrollably, soaking my shirt with her tears. I just held her and told her it was okay. I'm pretty sure I was the only person she ever told, and her secret remains safe with me. Story 26. When I was a kid, we lived in a 2-story house with only one bathroom, located on the ground floor at the back of the house. For a teenage boy like me, the long walk to the bathroom in the middle of the night was a hassle. Around the age of 12, I realized I could just pee into plastic bottles and pour the contents out the window onto the tin roof below. It was covered by a big tree, so no one noticed. Over time, I got lazier. I started leaving filled bottles in my room, sometimes forgetting to get rid of them. This habit went on for years, 4 or 5 to be exact. At one point, I was going through and filling 3 24-packs of water bottles in a week. Eventually, the tin roof below the window started to rust. One day it gave way, revealing a 2-by-4-foot hole. I panicked and hurriedly emptied all the bottles down the roof and threw the empties into a big black plastic bag. Then I casually told my parents I'd discovered a hole in the roof. A family friend who was a carpenter came to patch it up the next day. The moment he got near the hole, the smell hit him. He exclaimed, "Oh my God, squirrels must have pissed on the damn roof. Wow, that's a lot of piss in there." To this day, I laugh at the fact that he blamed squirrels for the ruined roof. But this story and his hilarious reaction are secrets I'll take to my grave. Story 27. Last year, I was invited to a Halloween party hosted by a friend. I knew her well, along with our mutual friends, as we were all part of the same drama group. This was the night before our big West End debut, so it was a casual gathering before the big day. I showed up without a proper costume, just some fake blood on my lips and a bandana, and had a few drinks, not too many, since I had a show the next morning. The vibe was okay, but there were some people I didn't know. They seemed a bit sketchy, doing drugs and drinking heavily. I stuck close to my friends and tried to enjoy myself. By 3 a.m., I decided it was time to find a spot to sleep. I ended up in a corner of a bedroom. My friend Max was already asleep on the bed, so I took the floor near the wall at the foot of the bed. There was enough room for people to walk past me, and I settled in. About an hour later, a guy I didn't know came into the room and sat down near me. Earlier that night, he had tried to kiss me, but I had pushed him away because I was in a relationship. I didn't think much of it at first, but then he started moving his hand up my leg and tried to reach into my jeans. I froze. I kept pushing him away, but I couldn't move or speak. The bandana I had on covered my lower face, making it harder for me to say anything. I just stayed there, hoping he would stop. Eventually, he fell asleep, holding my hand. A few hours later, he woke up and started again. I kept pushing him away, but it continued until 7 a.m. when someone's alarm went off. At that moment, I got up, grabbed nothing, and left. I walked to McDonald's and called my dad, lying that my friends had left and I wanted to go home. I've only ever told a few close friends about this. I didn't even know the guy's name, which later caused issues in my relationship. My girlfriend thought I had cheated on her, and it ultimately led to our breakup. Story 28. My grandmother once took in a stray cat, and it was a complete nightmare. She tried to make it a house cat, but it clearly didn't want to be one. The cat would run outside any chance it got, pee on everything, and only come back for food. When it wasn't eating, it would howl to be let out. If no one listened, it would hide by the door and bolt outside as soon as it could. The cat was constantly underfoot, running between people's legs and tripping them. One day it almost made my mother twist her ankle. That was the last straw for me. One morning before school, I saw the cat lounging by the back door outside. My grandma was asleep, and the cat, unusually, let me get close. Before it could run, I grabbed it by the scruff, stuffed it into a pillowcase, and then into my backpack. On my way to school, I drove to a neighborhood halfway there and let the cat go. At first, my grandma didn't notice since the cat rarely stayed inside, but eventually she realized it was gone. For the next 2 months, she would run to the back door every time she heard a noise outside, calling its name, thinking it had come back. Eventually, she gave up and assumed it had run away. I don't regret it at all. Story 29. Several years ago, I was hanging out with some friends in a vacant lot, smoking and drinking, when suddenly my stomach started making these horrific squelching sounds. It felt like an earthquake in my gut, and I knew there was no stopping the inevitable. Hoping it was just a fart, I tried to stay calm, but deep down I knew something far worse was about to happen. I pretended to get a phone call and bolted to the other side of a building where I spotted a dumpster. Ensuring no one could see me, I yanked down my jeans and underwear just in time for what can only be described as a volcanic eruption of molten horror to explode from my body. It was scalding hot, and the force of it had me shaking, tears streaming down my face as the relentless stream splattered across the pavement and even up the brick wall. When it finally subsided, I used my boxers to clean myself up, wiping until there was no trace of the catastrophe left. I tossed the ruined boxers into the dumpster and returned to my friends, acting as if nothing had happened. I told them the phone call was from a girl I was interested in, needing privacy to talk. They bought it. Now, I know this was disgusting, but I had no choice. It was late at night in an office park with no open bathrooms nearby, and there was no way I'd make it out of the park in time. My friend's brand new Miata with pristine leather seats was definitely not an option for this nightmare. I had to act fast to save everyone, especially myself. Story 30. I planned to fake my own death to escape my partially racist parents and their plans for an arranged marriage. They're set on me marrying someone they approve of in the future, but I already have a girlfriend who they don't accept because she's black, even though her skin is fairer than mine. I'm just a teenager, but I've thought this through carefully. My girlfriend's parents are supportive of us, even though they're Christians and I'm an atheist. My own parents are also Christian, but their evangelical beliefs make it impossible for them to accept my lack of faith. On top of that, I'm caught in the middle of a complicated family inheritance issue. In our culture, property and shares are passed down every second generation. And as the oldest son of the oldest son, I'm supposed to inherit everything from my grandfather. My dad and uncle are already at odds over it, and I don't want to be part of the drama. I'd rather let my cousins have it all. For years, I've struggled with suicidal thoughts due to the constant pressure, but my friends and my girlfriend have kept me going. My parents, however, have been dismissive, often telling me to just man up. It's clear to me that they see me as little more than a tool for their inheritance plans. I don't want to leave my younger sisters, who I love dearly, or my friends and girlfriend, who feel more like family to me than my actual parents do. I've decided that faking my death and starting over with my girlfriend is the only way to free myself from this toxic situation. It won't happen right away. I still have to stay until I'm legally able to make this move, but I know it's the best path for both my mental health and my future. Story 31. Had to sign into my alt to hide my shame. When I was 16, my dad was diagnosed with macular degeneration and awarded disability. My parents were divorced, so I would get a piece of it without affecting his takeaway, but not until I was 18. My mom would get a lump sum of $1,500, and it should have been paid out to me at 18 when I moved out to college. Long story short, this never happened, and I was pissed. I needed the money as mom's new husband made a lot more money than she did and messed with my financial aid to the point where the only aid I had were unsubsidized federal loans. When I asked about the money, my mom told me college was my dream, and if I wanted to go, I would have to pay my own way. The first year was hard. So when I was home on summer break, I stole her debit card while she was asleep and went to the bank to withdraw the money for my own use. She never found out, I have no clue how, and I lived a hell of a lot more comfortably. I feel like my actions were justified, but it still makes me feel shitty. Partly because I did it, but also partly because I had to do it in order to see that money. Not even my closest friends know about this, so thanks anonymous internet for helping me unload this. Story 32. I was living in the Czech Republic and went to Amsterdam for New Year's Eve. A friend from home came to visit me from the States. We met some locals who were friends of a mutual friend and pre-gamed with them before midnight. Let me tell you, the Dutch can seriously drink. I'm not a lightweight by any means, but I got insanely drunk with them to the point where I was struggling just to walk to the party we were attending. At the event, I felt the undeniable urge to puke. I told my friend, and he tried to bring me to the bathroom. This part is fuzzy, but apparently the bathroom was locked and there was a long line. My friend, also drunk, had the brilliant idea to take me upstairs where there was no bathroom. I'm not sure what he thought was going to happen, but of course I ended up vomiting. A lot. Unfortunately, it turned out to be the coat room. In his panicked state, my friend decided to clean up the mess using the jackets in the room. I was half passed out, trying to mumble for him to stop, but he kept reassuring me not to worry and that he'd handle it. Later, I went back downstairs and passed out on the couch for 2 hours. When I woke up, I had no recollection of what had happened and proceeded to enjoy the party. I met some amazing people, and everyone seemed to really like me. When we left the party, someone confronted us and blamed my friend for the incident. I stayed silent while he took the fall. I've never told anyone about this and always shudder when I think about it. I definitely made a bad name for Americans at that party. Story 33. I have 4 siblings, 3 of whom are half-siblings by blood. This has never affected our relationships. We all get along as siblings. When we were kids, my parents had split custody, and during our time with my dad, his sister acted as a sort of live-in nanny for us. One night, my aunt made a shocking and inappropriate comment. She told us that one of my sisters wasn't really my dad's child and claimed that her real father was someone who had raped her mother. My aunt has always been a very stunted person, known for lying and making outlandish remarks, so we brushed it off at the time. However, the comment lingered in the back of our minds. During her teenage years, the sister in question confronted my dad about the claim during a particularly dramatic episode. He shut it down quickly and definitively, leaving no room for discussion. Years later, during a private conversation with my dad, I brought up my aunt and her history of saying inappropriate things. My dad then confided in me something he had never shared before. He had undergone a medically confirmed successful vasectomy before meeting his 3rd wife, the mother of my 2 youngest sisters. He explained that while his wife had not been assaulted, as my aunt had claimed, she had cheated on him multiple times. While everyone remains suspicious about the older of the 2 girls my aunt mentioned, I now know with certainty that it is highly likely she isn't biologically my dad's child. Additionally, the youngest sister is just as likely not his biological child either. I would never share this information with anyone else. The damage it could do to my siblings and our family is unthinkable. This is a secret I will take to my grave. Story 34. This happened about 5 to 6 years ago when I was 12. My parents decided to get a divorce because my mom cheated on my dad. After the divorce, my mom won custody, but me and my little brother, who was about 5 or 6 at the time, decided to stay with our dad since my mom had left us for someone else. She didn't contest it. We visited her and her new boyfriend occasionally, and she tried to make up for things by buying us stuff. But I saw through her act, and it didn't work on me. One day, my dad told us not to visit her, even though we had already decided to go. We didn't listen, and that decision is something I regret to this day. While we were there, my mom promised my little brother that she'd buy him whatever he wanted if he stayed with her and her boyfriend. Being so young, he thought it was a good idea and decided to stay with them. My dad and I were devastated. I could tell it broke him more than it broke me, and a few weeks later, he said he wanted to visit my brother. He told me to wait in the car while he went to get him back. I didn't fully understand what he meant at the time, but I had a bad feeling about it. Before he left the car, he told me to lock the doors after he came back. It turned out my dad planned to kidnap my little brother. I didn't react or go along with it. Honestly, I was in shock and didn't know what to do. My mom, however, had anticipated something like this. She had hired 2 guys to escort my little brother outside, and when my dad tried to grab him, those men stopped him. What followed was horrible. They beat my dad badly. There was so much blood. He had to stay in the hospital for weeks, and I honestly thought he wasn't going to make it. Before he went into the hospital, he made me promise not to ever speak about that night again, and I've kept that promise until now.